In a small neighborhood where businesses had to fend for themselves, Evergreen Cutz stood defiant, a place of warmth, resilience, and community. Kenny and his crew didn't see any of that when they walked through its doors. What they saw was a stocky woman, apron tied around her waist, her hands dusted with the remnants of another workday. To them, she was soft, predictable, just another shop owner who would fold under pressure. They had done it before. Threats, violence, broken glass if necessary. Everyone had a breaking point. But Rosa Carter wasn't everyone else. Before she ever picked up a pair of clippers, she had carried weapons far deadlier, trained in the art of war, survived battles that had left men like Kenny in the dirt. She had spent years sharpening her instincts, molding her body into something built for combat, built to endure. The gang thought they were forcing a woman into submission. Instead, they were cornering a soldier, daring her to fight back. And when the dust settled, when fists had flown and blood had been spilled, it wouldn't be Evergreen Cutz that lay in ruins. It would be them. The steady hum of clippers, the rhythmic snip of scissors, and the warm scent of coconut oil filled the air. The afternoon sun streamed through the large front window, casting golden light across the polished floors. Rosa Carter stood behind her chair, effortlessly twisting a client's thick curls into neat coils. Her hands worked with practiced skill, but her eyes flicked toward the front of the shop, always watching, always aware. She saw him first. A young gang member, no older than 20, leaned against the lamppost across the street, pretending to scroll through his phone. He wasn't fooling anyone. The same kid had been there for the past 3 days, staring through the glass, taking mental notes, testing the waters. Rosa exhaled slowly, tightening a coil with precision. "Rosa, you hear what happened to Sonny's Deli?" Nia, one of her stylists, lowered her voice as she spoke. Rosa didn't look up. "What happened?" "They smashed his windows last night, tagged his walls, said he needs to pay his dues." A knowing silence fell over the shop. Another business hit. Another warning. Rosa nodded, finishing the last twist, then met her client's eyes in the mirror with a reassuring smile. "You're all set, baby. You know the drill, oil those roots, wrap it at night." The client smiled back, but the weight of the conversation lingered. Then the door chime jingled. The shop went still. Kenny Jackson walked in like he owned the place, flanked by 2 of his men. He was tall, broad, and carried himself with the arrogance of a man who had never been told no. His presence was suffocating, filling the salon with unspoken threats. He clapped his hands together, flashing a wolfish grin. "Damn, this place is nice. Real nice." Rosa didn't stop moving. She turned toward the counter, wiping her hands on a towel, unfazed. "You lost, Kenny?" A chuckle rippled through his crew. "Nah, I know exactly where I'm at." His grin widened, but his eyes were sharp. "Came to talk business." A tense silence filled the room. Rosa leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Then talk." Kenny let the silence stretch, savoring the way tension thickened the air. He moved slowly, deliberately, his dark eyes dragging over every inch of the shop, lingering just long enough on each detail to make it clear. He wasn't just looking. He was claiming. His fingers tapped lazily against the edge of the counter. "You've been running this little spot for what, 5, 10 years?" He clicked his tongue, shaking his head like it was a damn shame. Damn shame if it all went to waste. Rosa, unmoved, continued wiping her hands on the towel. Her expression was solid, steady as ever. "You wasting my time, or are you getting to the point?" Kenny's smirk faltered just slightly. A quick flicker, like a candle caught in a sudden draft. His boys caught it. The subtle hesitation. The momentary loss of control. But Kenny was quick. He rolled his shoulders, masking the slip with a slow shake of his head. "Damn, Rosa. That's cold." His voice carried a mocking warmth, like he was disappointed, but still amused by her defiance. "I'm out here trying to help a sister out and you acting like I'm the bad guy." One of his boys, Dre, let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "That's the thing, boss. Women like her don't ever know when they need help. Kenny's grin stretched wider. His gaze swept over Rosa, slow and deliberate, like he was assessing her, not as a business owner, but as something to be judged. You sitting real comfortable behind this counter, huh? His voice dropped, an undercurrent of something uglier slipping through. Bet you been sitting real comfortable your whole damn life. Reese, the other man standing just behind him, snorted. Yeah. She looked like she been eating good. Put all that money into biscuits instead of security. The laughter from his boys hit like a slap, rippling through the shop, bouncing off the walls. Nia stiffened where she stood, her jaw tightening, her grip around the spray bottle clenching. Marcus, another stylist, exhaled through his nose, rolling his shoulders like he was forcing himself to stay still. But Rosa? Rosa was motionless. She didn't flinch, didn't shift, didn't even blink. Kenny watched her carefully, waiting for something, waiting for her to break. But when she didn't fold under his stare, his grin curled into something meaner. See, I know you're smart, he continued, stepping even closer, crowding her space. You ain't dumb enough to think you can fight off the whole world. His voice lowered, the false friendliness melting away, leaving only the raw threat beneath. This neighborhood? It's changing. More desperate people moving in. You never know who might walk in here one night. Maybe someone mad. Maybe someone careless. His gaze flickered toward the cash register. Maybe someone just looking to take what they think they deserve. The weight of his words pressed against the room. Rosa remained still, her voice steady and smooth when she finally spoke. You selling protection? Kenny's lips parted into a slow grin, his teeth flashing gold. Nah, I'm offering protection. That's the difference. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping to a whisper. This ain't some shakedown, Queen. This is community service. We just making sure everything stays peaceful. The amusement returned to his voice, but there was something meaner underneath it now. He tilted his head, eyes dancing over her frame once again, deliberately slow, deliberately insulting. I mean, look at you. He clicked his tongue. Built like a damn tank, but still fragile in all the ways that matter. He let out a slow whistle, shaking his head like it was truly a shame. You ever think about what happens if, let's say, you trip one day? One bad fall, and all that weight comes crashing down? The laughter from his boys was even louder this time, bouncing off the walls, filling the shop like smoke. Nia shifted on her feet, lips pressed into a thin line, shoulders stiff. Marcus inhaled slowly, gripping the clippers in his hand like he was considering using them for something else. Kenny grinned, feeding off the reaction. Then, without another word, he reached over the counter and popped open the register. The click of the drawer sliding open sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Before anyone could react, Kenny grabbed a handful of cash, a 20, a 5, a couple of ones. Not much, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he did it, right in front of her. A direct challenge. The sound of rustling bills ripped through the tension as Kenny flipped through the money lazily, rubbing the 20 between his fingers like he was testing its quality. Damn, feels real soft, he muttered. Guess that's what happens when you don't gotta work hard for it, huh? Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed the money onto the floor. It fluttered down between them, landing in a crumpled mess at Rosa's feet. Oops, he murmured. Then, before anyone could stop him, he reached behind him, grabbed one of the glass shampoo bottles off the shelf, and let it slip from his fingers. The bottle exploded against the hardwood floor, liquid splattering across the surface, the scent of honey and coconut oil instantly thick in the air. The salon gasped. Dre let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Damn. Clumsy as hell, boss. Kenny turned back to Rosa, watching her. Waiting for her to fold. Waiting for fear to settle in. Waiting for her to be like the others. Rosa finally moved. Her thick fingers clamped around his wrist, tight, fast, like a vice. Kenny froze. The laughing stopped. His boys stiffened, their cocky postures flickering with uncertainty. Rosa didn't say a word. She just squeezed. Kenny's fingers twitched. His wrist flexed against her grip, but she didn't budge. His face twitched, not from pain, but from realization. Realization that he had just miscalculated. He yanked his arm back, too hard, too quick, like he was escaping instead of taking control. His smirk was gone. He shoved the money back into the register, slamming the drawer shut, his jaw tight. His eyes flickered over her once more, but he didn't step closer this time. Instead, he inhaled sharply through his nose, rolling his shoulders back like he was brushing off the moment. "Aight," he said, his voice a little too even. "I get it." He turned, flicking his fingers toward the door, motioning for his boys to follow. At the door, Kenny paused just for a second. Next time, his voice was calm, but there was an edge now, something darker curling beneath the surface. "I won't be so friendly." And then he was gone. The scent of broken shampoo still lingered in the air long after Kenny and his crew walked out of Evergreen Cutz. The shards of glass glittered under the fluorescent lights, a few larger pieces embedded in the grooves of the wooden floor. The shop had fallen into a thick silence, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nia was the first to move. With quick, jerky motions, she grabbed the broom from the back corner and started sweeping up the mess, her hands tight on the handle, muttering curses under her breath. Marcus bent down to help, shaking his head as he picked up the larger shards of glass with careful fingers. Rosa remained where she stood behind the counter, arms crossed over her broad chest, her face unreadable. "Rosa." Nia's voice sliced through the silence, her tone sharp with anger barely held in check. "What the hell was that?" Rosa didn't react. Nia threw down the broom, her patience snapping. "That was a test," she answered for her, voice growing louder. "And what? We just ignore it? Pretend this ain't the same thing they did to Sonny's deli before they busted out his windows?" She gestured toward the broken bottle, the spilled product seeping into the cracks of the floor. "They ain't just testing, Rosa. They're warming up." Marcus ran a hand over his head, his jaw tight. "She's right," he said quietly. "We need to be real about this. You know what's coming next." Rosa did know. Kenny had already made up his mind. He had walked in here, already decided that Evergreen Cutz was his next claim. And this was just the beginning. The next time he wouldn't just be breaking things. The next time he wouldn't just be making a statement. He would tear this place apart to prove a point. She should have been afraid. She wasn't. She had seen worse men than Kenny in far worse places than this. "We keep running business as usual," she said finally, her voice level. Nia let out a sharp breath, hands going to her hips. "That's it? That's your whole plan?" Rosa leaned forward against the counter, meeting her stare with an unshaken calm. "They want me scared," she said. "They want me to fold before they even have to do anything. So we keep moving. We keep working." Nia looked ready to argue, but she saw something in Rosa's face that made her swallow whatever words were sitting on her tongue. She shook her head instead, grabbing the broom again and sweeping, harder than necessary. Marcus, however, wasn't letting this go. "And what happens when they come back, Rosa?" His voice was quiet but firm. "'Cause they will. You know how this goes. They're going to start harassing the shop, making it impossible to do business until you give in." Rosa's fingers tapped slowly against the countertop. Because Marcus was right. The next morning, Evergreen Cutz opened as usual. The neon sign flickered on. Chairs were set up. Stations were prepped. The scent of curling irons heating up mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. Customers started filtering in, chatting and laughing as if the tension from the day before hadn't soaked into the walls. But Rosa knew better. It started small. At first, it was just presents. Kenny's boys started hanging around outside, posted up on the curb across the street, leaning against parked cars, smoking, talking loudly. They weren't blocking the door, but they were watching. Always watching. Then they started getting closer. Dre and Reese leaned against the wall right next to the entrance, their bodies relaxed, their smirks lazy. But the message was clear. Every time a customer walked in, they muttered something under their breath. Sometimes it was harmless. "Damn, sis, you look good today." Other times it was more pointed. "You sure you want to spend money here? Whole place might be gone next week." A few of the regulars started hesitating, glancing nervously at the men before stepping inside. By the third day, the gang upped the pressure. They started parking their bikes in front of the entrance, forcing customers to weave through them just to get inside. One of the younger gang members, some lil punk barely out of high school, started playing his music loud as hell, the bass shaking the windows of the shop. Then the window broke. A brick, thrown in the dead of night, crashing through the glass. A picture frame shattered, a photo of Rosa's mother, the woman who had inspired her to open Evergreen Cutz in the first place. The message was clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about breaking her. Nia was furious when she arrived that morning. "Oh hell no. This is war." Marcus stood next to her, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "What now, Ro?" Rosa bent down, picking up the picture frame from the floor, brushing the shards of glass off carefully. She didn't answer. Not at first. Then, in the silence, her voice cut through. "We get ready." Marcus frowned. "For what?" Rosa lifted her head, her reflection fractured in the remaining shards of the broken window. "For when they come back,